betrayal, the Conservative exodus that's shaking Westminster. The knives are out in Westminster, and this time, they're not just aimed at Labour. Picture this. Kemi Badenoch, sitting in her office at Conservative campaign headquarters, watching yet another loyal Conservative walk through the exit door, not to retirement, not to the backbenches, but straight into the welcoming arms of Nigel Farage and Reform UK. The sound you're hearing? That's a Conservative Party hemorrhaging talent, credibility, and hope, one defection at a time. Today's betrayal comes courtesy of Graham Simpson, the Scottish Conservative MSP who's just delivered what can only be described as a political body blow to an already reeling Tory leadership. But here's the thing that will keep Badenoch awake tonight. Simpson isn't just any defector. He's a man who joined Conservative Party at 15 years old, spent decades building his political career within its ranks, and has now publicly declared that the party he once believed in has fundamentally failed the people it claims to serve. Let's be brutally honest about what happened in that Livingston press conference. When Simpson stood alongside Nigel Farage, he wasn't just announcing a political realignment. He was delivering a damning indictment of everything Kemi Badenoch claims to represent. Too many people feel let down and ignored, Simpson declared, his words cutting through the political spin like a sword through silk. They feel the system is against them, that the traditional parties don't even care about them. The irony is almost too perfect to bear. Here's Badenoch, desperately trying to rebuild the Conservative brand after the electoral catastrophe that was Liz Truss and the long, painful decline under successive Tory governments, only to watch her own MPs publicly state that her party simply doesn't care about ordinary people. It's not just embarrassing, it's politically devastating. But Simpson's defection is merely the latest chapter in what becoming a Conservative exodus of biblical proportions. The names read like a roll call of Tory talent. Sir Jake Berry, the former party chairman who once sat at the very heart of Conservative strategy, Lee Anderson, whose working-class credentials gave the Tories a foothold in communities they'd struggled to reach, Dame Andrea Jenkins, a former MP whose departure sent shockwaves through Yorkshire politics, and now Simpson, whose Scottish credentials could prove crucial in Reform's northern ambitions. What's particularly galling for Badenoch must be the choreographed nature of these defections. This isn't political chaos. It's political theatre at its most sophisticated. Farage isn't just picking up disgruntled backbenchers. He's systematically dismantling Conservative coalition, targeting figures with specific regional influence, particular expertise, or symbolic importance. It's chess, not checkers, and Badenoch is finding herself constantly on the defensive. The Scottish dimension adds another layer of complexity that must be keeping Conservative strategists awake at night. Scotland, once a Tory wasteland that's slowly been showing signs of Conservative revival, now faces a prospect of Reform UK establishing a serious foothold north of the border. Simpson's prediction that next year's Holyrood elections will see a very different parliament isn't political hyperbole. It's a warning shot across the bow of Scottish Conservative ambitions. And here's where Farage's political genius becomes apparent. His declaration that Reform will have a Scottish leader ahead of the Holyrood elections isn't just organisational housekeeping. It's a direct challenge to Conservative narrative that they're the natural home for right-of-centre Scottish politics. By positioning Reform as a credible alternative with serious leadership ambitions, Farage is forcing Conservatives to fight on multiple fronts, against Labour in England, against the SNP in Scotland, and now against Reform everywhere. The personal element of Simpson's departure must sting particularly sharply. His open letter to former Conservative colleagues, acknowledging the anger, disappointment, and perhaps some unadulterated nastiness his decision will provoke, reads like the political equivalent of a divorce decree. There's genuine emotion there, a sense of reluctant necessity that makes his criticisms all the more damaging. When someone who joined your party as a teenager, who spent decades defending your principles, publicly declares that you've lost your way, that's not opposition research, that's a mirror reflecting uncomfortable truths. What makes this betrayal even more acute is Simpson's explicit invitation to other Conservatives to follow his lead. His promise that his door will remain open to those who have fantastic thoughts of Scotland isn't just political courtesy, it's recruitment. His not just leaving, his actively encouraging others to join him. For Badenoch, every Conservative MP or MSP who felt marginalised, overlooked, or frustrated now is a high-profile example of successful defection. The timing couldn't be worse for Conservative morale. Just as Badenoch has been attempting to present a united front, to demonstrate that the Conservative Party has learned from its mistakes and is ready to provide credible opposition to Labour, her own members are publicly declaring their lack of faith in the project. Its political sabotage from within made all the more effective because it comes from people who genuinely believed in conservative principles. But let's dig deeper into what this means for Farage's broader strategy. His comment about reform being an advanced teenager that hasn't yet reached full political maturity is classic Farage, self-deprecating humor that masks serious ambition. By positioning reform as a growing, evolving force, he's setting expectations for continued expansion while also providing cover for inevitable growing pains. The mention of interviewing 200 candidates over a weekend speaks to organizational ambition that goes far beyond the protest politics that reform's critics often dismiss. This is a party building infrastructure, developing talent pipelines, and preparing for sustained political engagement across multiple electoral cycles. For Badenoch, this represents an existential threat, a parallel conservative movement that's not content to remain on the fringes but actively seeks to replace the Conservative Party as a natural home for right-of-centre politics in Britain. If you're finding this analysis as fascinating as we are, and you want to stay ahead of every twist and turn in this unfolding political drama, make sure you subscribe to UK Connors right now. We're your front row seat to the machinations, betrayals, and power plays that are reshaping British politics before our very eyes. The psychological warfare element of these defections can't be understated. Every time a Conservative figure joins reform, it sends a message to remaining Tory MPs and activists that resistance is futile, that the writing is on the wall, that they are backing a losing horse. It's a political equivalent of death by 1,000 cuts, with each defection making the next one more likely, more justifiable, and more devastating to Conservative morale. Consider the optics from Badenoch's perspective. She's supposed to be the fresh face of Conservative politics, the leader who can rebuild trust and credibility after years of chaos and decline. Instead, she's watching her party hemorrhage talent to a movement led by a man who's never even been a Conservative MP. The personal slight is obvious, but the political implications are catastrophic. Simpson's characterization of his decision as not easy, but ultimately necessary captures something essential about the current Conservative predicament. These aren't opportunistic career moves or personal vendettas. They are principled decisions by people who genuinely believed in Conservative politics but have concluded that the party has lost its way. That makes them infinitely more damaging than the usual political backstabbing, because they carry the weight of disappointed idealism. The Scottish context adds layers of complexity that extend far beyond regional politics. Scotland has always been a laboratory for British political innovation, the place where new movements test their mettle and prove their national credibility. By establishing a serious Scottish presence, reform is signalling its intention to become a genuinely national political force rather than an English protest movement. For Badenoch, this represents a potential loss of the Conservative Party's claim to be the natural party of the Union. Farage's prediction about potential first ministerial ambitions might seem premature, but it reflects the kind of long-term thinking that's made him such a formidable political operator. By positioning reform not just as an opposition force but as a potential party of government, he's forcing voters to take his movement seriously and consider what a reform administration might actually look like. The institutional knowledge that figures like Simpson bring to reform can't be replicated through traditional party building. These are people who understand how the system works, who have relationships across the political spectrum, who know where the bodies are buried. Their defection doesn't just represent a loss of personnel for the Conservatives. It represents a transfer of expertise, credibility, and insider knowledge to a political rival. What's particularly clever about Farage's approach is how he's managed to make these defections seem inevitable rather than surprising. By building expectation around Conservative departures, he's created a narrative where remaining loyal to the Tory party seems increasingly anachronistic. The Scottish Conservatives had apparently been speculating about Simpson's potential defection for months, which means his actual departure carried the weight of fulfilled prophecy rather than shocking betrayal. The open letter element of Simpson's announcement deserves particular attention. By framing his departure as a reluctant but necessary decision, by acknowledging the personal cost and expressing continued respect for former colleagues, he's managed to make his criticism of the Conservative Party seem more credible, more sorrowful than angry. This isn't a politician burning bridges. It's someone explaining why the bridge has already collapsed. For Badenoch personally, each defection must feel like a referendum on her leadership. These are people who could have stayed, who could have worked within the system to promote change, but who have instead concluded that a conservative party under her guidance is beyond redemption. That's not just political opposition. It's a fundamental rejection of her entire project. The generational aspect of Simpson's political journey, joining the Conservatives at 15, leaving in his mature political years, speaks to a broader narrative about the party's lost connection with its own history and values. When lifelong conservatives feel compelled to seek political fulfillment elsewhere, it suggests problems that go far deeper than policy disagreements or strategic differences. The weekend of 200 candidate interviews that Farage mentioned isn't just organizational efficiency, it's a demonstration of political momentum that the Conservatives simply cannot match. While Badenoch struggles to maintain unity within her existing parliamentary party, Farage is building a movement from scratch with the energy and enthusiasm that comes from believing you're part of something genuinely transformative. As we watch this political realignment unfold, one thing becomes increasingly clear. The Conservative Party that Kimi Badenoch inherited is not the Conservative Party that will contest the next general election. Whether that's because it will have been fundamentally transformed by internal reform or because it will have been replaced by something entirely new remains to be seen. But change is coming, whether the conservative establishment likes it or not. The betrayal that Badenoch must feel today isn't just personal, it's institutional. The party she's trying to lead is being systematically dismantled by forces that claim to represent everything conservative politics should stand for but cannot achieve within the Conservative Party structure. That's not just political competition. It's an existential challenge that demands a response equal to the threat. What happens next will determine not just the fate of individual political careers, but the future of right-of-centre politics in Britain. Will Badenoch find a way to stem the hemorrhaging and rebuild conservative credibility? Will Farage succeed in positioning reform as a natural successor to conservative governance? Will the British electorate accept this fundamental realignment of their political landscape? Make sure you subscribe to UK Connors, because we'll be here to analyze every move, every betrayal, and every masterstroke in this unfolding political drama. The old certainties of British politics are crumbling before our eyes, and we're your guide to understanding what emerges from the wreckage. Hit that subscribe button now, because in politics, as in life, the most interesting stories are the ones where you genuinely don't know how they'll end.